Hi, this is Bob Wells here, and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. This is the show where we hear about people's interests and uncover some fascinating stories at the same time. I hope you enjoy today's show. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories. In today's show, I'm joined by Deon Barrett. Deon is an outdoor adventurer, motivational speaker, and is founder of the True North Project, which aims to inspire and motivate young people to find their meaning and purpose through experiencing nature and the outdoors. Hello and welcome to Undercurrent Stories, Deon.
Hi, Bob, and thank you for having me on the pod. Been listening to a few episodes and you do really well, so I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, well, that's not very nice of you to say, so thank you very much. So whereabouts in the world are you today?
Currently situated where I reside in Surrey, in UK, England. And yeah, just spending time with the family, I think, today before I start my new job. And yeah, just enjoying the chat.
Excellent stuff. Well, anyway, so before we talk about your life as an adventurer and the True North Project, could you just please tell us a little bit about you, your life journey, how you became interested in adventure?
Yeah, I think for me, it all kind of resonates with the younger me. I've always, so growing up, my kind of contrasting background of city life and confusion, and then going to my grandparents and enjoying like the countryside of Surrey, and I think through visiting my grandparents and hearing my granddad's travels, he always used to go to the Lake Districts. He would have paintings on the wall, and I would just like be mesmerized by the idea of it all. Yeah. So I think that that kind of fed into the kind of mindset that I had as a young lad. And for me, back at home, things were very definitely congested. And
this was confused. In London, was it?
Yeah, so back in London, just on the outskirts of southwest London, really.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, there was a lot of confusion about my parents and who I was and just my identity as a whole. My parents did split up when I was born, and my mum came from America back to the UK. So she was trying to protect me in ways that I feel might have caused a bit of confliction. So with that, I needed an outlet. And the outlet was my opportunities wandering around like outdoors, either in dialect areas or kind of the woods local to home. And I think through that, I really kind of just connected with myself as a person, and no identity crisis was happening while I was in that moment. And so as I was growing up, the identity thing fed into my troublesome life in school and not being able to knuckle down and really enjoy the education side of things. And it was more about mingling with friends and causing trouble. And unfortunately, I just felt like I needed to be with the cool kids. And at that time, the cool kids were the troublesome kids and the people in the wrong crowd.
Yes.
So kind of going back to the question in regards to what led me to the outdoors was probably after all the confusion and the chaos within my growing up side of things. It was stepping into the army, and going to the army, and really I got to reconnect with nature in a weird way. It was tough, it was hard, but I enjoyed it, and I just felt like a big kid at the time. So that reignited the flame, I suppose. And then I suppose the ethos behind being green and being outdoors and doing tough things outdoors again fueled that fire of challenges and just overseeing my passions, but doing them to the full extent that I think I need as a person. I don't like really doing things half-hearted. everyone's different, but for me, if I'm going for a run, for instance, I need to do it with weight, just to feel like I'm challenging myself, even though I could probably do it without weight and still be in just as a bad state. It's just a mental thing for me.
Yeah.
And it's probably some sort of dark and horrible way of kind of deciphering that, but I'll wait until I go to see a psychiatrist
Yeah, but
about that.
you obviously like to challenge yourself.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I do. I love
Yeah.
challenges.
Just going back to growing up in southwest London and the gang culture for people who don't know a lot about gang culture. We hear about stuff like knife crime and inner city gangs. Could you just describe what that's like, please?
Yeah, I'll do my best. It's been a while, thankfully. But when I was growing up, it was early 2000s. We were, you do, I like to say it's like a crab in a barrel mentality. When you're in and around the city, you're still learning, and misguided by the older generation as well. I feel it's very easy to build this construct around mentally to say that you're stuck in this rut, and the only
Yeah.
way to survive is that fight or flight survival thing,
Yeah.
which all of us definitely did have, and to an extent, I think it still continues today, even more so.
Yeah.
And I think having a gang culture around you is just it's a sense of security. Not only that, it's your friends. These are the people you spend all your time with, but you all think the same. There's no one really trying to empower you in a positive way. It's more like, what can I sell? What can I do to make myself have a name, an image, or actually just progress financially? And I think that's what it was for me.
Yeah.
It was more, okay, I got a good, an okay set of friends. I say very okay loosely. But I think that mentality of feeling stuck and the world's against you and no one understands you definitely feeds into the mentality of gang culture, especially back then, and probably more so now. I think people just want status now. I think there is people, when you're young, you can be very conflicted anyway. And I think people play on that and prey on it, really, and for their own benefits, really.
You mentioned earlier about I'm not sure whether you said misguided or ignored by the older generation. Is that how you felt?
I think misguided was more how I felt, because we did have the older generation whose experiences were somewhat similar, but I think the road to hell is paved with good intentions regardless. And you may think at the time you're young, dumb, and just experiencing life to an extent, but then there's also the real element of, you could go to prison, you could essentially cause harm or be harmed, or sometimes it can be fatal. Which, like, for me, I saw a lot of everything, really, and experienced it firsthand and secondhand. So, and through that time, I knew that it was all wrong. Like, this wasn't who I wanted to be.
No.
And I think that's where if I had that person to look up to at that time, I think in a good way as well, because you can look up to people in a negative way. But if I had someone to look up to in a positive way, say, like, a bit more educated, and with a better sense of direction, I think that's what was missing for a lot of people. And I think still now it's very much everyone's grown up too fast, and the older generation is kind of letting it happen. For loss of better words and explanation. So, yeah, for me, it was just it was a dark time. I did feel trapped, and I did see that I had to do anything to kind of survive at the same time.
Yeah, which you've clearly done, and
Yeah,
I guess without putting words in your
appreciate
mouth,
that.
the army, I guess, was a continuation of friends and colleagues, but in a more positive way. Would you say?
Oh, 100%. And yeah, you couldn't be more correct. I think for me, when I knew I was going into the army, and I had a lot of time. It took me 4 years to get in, from even signing on like for even signing up, just due to criminal convictions and this, that, and the other,
Yeah,
which slowed down the process. But it gave me a lot of time to chew that fat down to the bone and understand, okay, I still could be at risk, but I'm doing this for a better purpose and more than myself. It was more of a selfish act,
yeah,
um, where I know my family would benefit from. Professionally, I would benefit from. And I think I just wanted to mold myself into that human being, who I admired on, let's say, the TV screen or something like
yeah.
that. Someone with a bit more about them,
And you and you,
and the
you
morals were there.
and you knew you had that in you, but you just needed to get it out. I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. I wasn't one to be able to do it on my own, so
no,
I needed to get guided at that time,
yeah,
especially just before that. I did nearly go to prison. Fortunately enough, I didn't, but that was a massive pivotal turning point mentally to really go, right, this isn't the life I want, and I need to do something about it,
yeah.
essentially.
And how long were you in the army for, Dion?
So I was in the army for 8 years, pretty
Oh
much on the
wow,
dot. It was a good time, bad times, but yeah, it was. I wouldn't change it for the world,
no,
and it was definitely it done what I set out for it to do.
yeah. And I guess you had experience of traveling the world, did you?
Fortunately, yeah. So even before that, my mum was one of those, really, like, she would drag me along to do everything with her. So if she
Yes.
went on holiday, for whatever reason, I like to think that she wanted me there, but I wasn't the best person to be with on holiday back then. But she took me to either Cornwall or Turkey or just wherever she went on her travel. So I had a good, idea of the wider world,
Yeah,
and the atmosphere difference between where I grew up and other cultures. So I was very fortunate with that. So that did assist me later on, where I'm working with my colleagues in the army, and it's their first time on a plane, and some of them got nervous, some of them didn't even know what was happening. They haven't been outside of their area growing
yeah,
up.
yeah.
So I was a voice of reason at sometimes, just for that. So it did give me a kind of, edge to the whole overall kind of
Yeah,
traveling
yeah.
aspect of the army.
No, it's great how your life changed, and you knew what you had in you, and you joined the army, and then but throughout you had this sort of love of the outdoors.
Hmm. Yeah, I think the outdoors has been, um, a very relatable, environment and element to myself as a person.
Yes.
And I think it's the same with many people once they find it, and understand it and have that moment for their one-to-one outdoors. And it's not to sound like a massive tree hugger or anything like that, or a philosopher, but I do think once you're outdoors and it's secluded and you get in a different mind frame,
Yes.
you have that voice in your head, and that voice in your head says things you wouldn't normally hear on a day-to-day basis, and you're able to pick apart maybe your everyday issues or something about yourself you want to change. And it is really that therapy without needing to fork out a load of money or feel like intimidated by going to a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
It's self preservation, I think. And looking back now, I think every time I was out in nature, like it was that moment to reflect and that moment to really, understand myself, and the world around me, and how I can kind of utilize my passion within the outdoors to guide others to do the same.
It's interesting that, isn't it? Because I know for myself, and I know other people who do. But even if you feel a little bit as though you need to waken yourself up, just go for a little walk around the park or in nature, 20 minutes, and you feel great. It sort of lifts you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's almost like cliche because it's right on your doorstep and it's just down to you to put on some shoes and go out the front door, which a lot of people do find tough as well. So, yeah, the cliche and the caveat of it is you can't mock it until you try it, which I've done a lot of growing up as well. Like I never thought when I was in my teens that I was going to be climbing any mountain, let alone trying to climb mountains in the Himalayas or whatever I've got in the future.
Yeah.
And having conversations with other people in my peer group for similar things, it's just like I am now going, no, you're missing the trick. You can find something for yourself out there, and everyone, I believe, everyone on this earth could do a little bit of adventure for themselves, whether it be riding a bike down the road, running down the street, going to your local park, having a picnic, whatever it may be. Do it outside, and I guarantee you, your mind will change for the better.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So this brings us to what I'd really like to talk about, and I think listeners will find really interesting, which is can you just tell us the aims of the True North project, the project that you've put together, please, Deon?
Yeah, so overall, the True North project was my way of aiming to give back. And when I first started, it was just helping others find their passion through outdoors and the means of the outdoors, whether it be hiking, camping, or a construct of everything outdoorsy. And for me, it came from, it was rooted from an old friend group, which I still have today, but the group has kind of gone its separate ways. And we brought people together for like suicide awareness and mental health, and just to help everyone and empower one another. And press the reset button. And we've done that for about 2, maybe 3 years. And the experiences we had with individuals who came along to these open, like hiking groups, essentially through Instagram, was phenomenal. And
what sort of numbers of people did you get, Deon, coming on?
So we got from anything around from like as low as 5 to maybe 30 individuals.
Oh, wow.
And it was getting to maybe the 50 kind of 50 participants, and like that alone blew me away. But at the same time, it was certain individuals who came up to us and was like thanking us. Otherwise, they were toying with the idea of suicide and this, that, and the other. And we've all been there ourselves. So being able to give these people hope was just, I felt like without sounding pessimistic, I felt like I was doing God's work in a nice way, without being too flamboyant about it. Yeah. But that's when I heard certain individuals come up to either my colleagues or myself and talk about these tough things that they're going through. It made me feel like I needed to continue this. And for me, being outdoors and just adventuring, I wouldn't call myself a hiker or a mountaineer, just the adventure side of things, like being outdoors and being embedded in the experience of maybe being lost and finding yourself, and all of that plays a part of it. And I just want to continue our efforts with that. And so the True North project came about through me wanting to highlight the fact that as a black person, you don't see many of us, or you didn't see many of us at the time out on the hills. And it took my friend who done the groups with previously to say, you know what, you're the only black guy I see on the mountains. Why is that? And because he asked why, it made me think, oh, damn, why? Like, I didn't even realize. So I was pondering on that for quite a while. And I was like, okay, I could do something here. I could do something which pushes ethnic groups around the world, and not only that, just local communities to really engage with the outdoors.
Yes.
And so with that in mind, I was like, okay. And also my characteristics of pushing myself and my limits was just like, okay, at the moment I like hiking, climbing and mountaineering. So what is the ultimate of that? And I had a lot of like kind of naysayers when I started talking about the idea, telling me to do something else and this and it's been done before. But Everest came about, and as soon as I thought about Everest, my partner and I watched a film, and it was Everest, and she was just like, "Yeah, you're not doing that at all." And then a day later, the Nimsdai documentary came out as well. We watched that, and when I watched that, I can't lie, and it does sound cliche now, is it resonated with me on such a level that I was just like, I need to do this. That is exactly what I need to do. So with that in mind, I watched the film. I felt like I've already been there. It was kind of mystic in a way, and I was just like, this is what I've been set out to do. Because before the True North project, I'll be honest, apart from the army playing a part in my life, like I didn't really have a sense of direction. I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. I was still confused. I was that confused little kid. So I knew I had a passion. I knew I had a purpose. And it was just about, how do I magnify my message, and how do I make an impact for those who may or may not need it, but find something within my story as well. So dragging this out a little bit, like I said, I do ramble, so I apologize to your listeners. But Everest came around, and then I just started planning. Didn't know anything apart from it's the tallest mountain in the world, and it's very tough to get to the top. Like that. Yeah. That's as far as I knew. Yeah. That's as far as my knowledge went. But I done my education. Well, I say my educated. I done my research, and then the more I researched, the more I was just like, yeah. This is the hardest I've researched for anything. So this is definitely the nail on the head. So what I done, I put my target of climbing Mount Everest and being one of the first Black people to do so, to summit Mount Everest by 2025.
So you're currently planning that trip for 2025, and obviously started training and sponsorship and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yes. So it's the toughest thing I've come up against, mentally and physically. It's been tough, but it doesn't stop there. So, with Everest in mind, I had a lot of people on the interwebs, and the internet and all kind of social medias. And like, there was a point where, because I was a Black man trying to do something like impactful, and, the term Black was used quite a lot in the media for what I was doing. Yeah. It wasn't the key fundamental part of it, but it was a story within the message. And a lot of people just went, well, what's color got to do with it? This, that, and the other. And it was very deflating. And there was a point where it was just like, you know what, I've dug up a lot more than I could chew off, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that was very frustrating, but we pushed on, and Everest is still looking like it's going to be 2025, providing the amazing sponsors still get on board with it. Yeah. And in October now, I am going to Nepal for the first time.
Oh, right.
And I'm also going to be going to Everest Base Camp hopefully documenting that well. So again, for the documentation of it is, I want it to be educational for the
Yes.
everyday person, maybe
Yeah.
toying with the idea of doing an expedition or low level things like hiking and camping in the UK, for example.
Yeah.
But just seeing someone from my background, who's not had a lot to hand financially, and things have seemed very impossible to an extent, and kind of see me as a way of going, well, if he can do it, so can I. And that's what I want to do and provide for people through these expeditions, is educate them and also empower them. So I'll be doing that myself, and walking walking the walk and talking the talk as well. So I go to Everest Base Camp, and we'll be climbing Loboche East, which I believe is 6,119,000 meters.
Wow. So that's I mean, that's getting on for 18,000 feet, isn't it?
I like to think that don't get me wrong, like, it's not the toughest mountain to start with. It's quite low level in all essence.
Yes.
But the opportunity has arisen with the right people who I want to climb with, and I think it'll be a perfect kind of starting block for the rest to come. Talking about Everest, and hopefully my aim is now to go to Everest and to the North Pole in one consecutive year.
Right, the North Pole.
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
Oh, right.
So, like I said, I don't
not
like
doing anything
to take
by
it
halves
easy.
then.
No. So for me, like one of the things I take away from my friends and our kind of conversations is always go a little bit further, and go beyond, essentially. So Everest to me is a very personal endeavor, but it's also because of the naysayers that it's been done before, and maybe a bit of my own mental kind of, well, it's Everest, like, people have done it, so it's doable. Therefore, how hard, like, for me it's a bit of a catch-22. How hard is it? Oh, it's very hard. Well, let's go do it then. And then the North Pole, as I was kind of, that came about through just conversating with a good friend, and she's done North Pole expeditions, but she's very well known within the kind of the expedition world, I suppose. So North Pole came about through having a conversation with her, but I looked into the history of voyages to the North Pole as well, and the first expedition actually had a black person on it, and that's little to know, and his name was Matthew Henderson. It's been documented a few times, but very loosely. I say that it's remarkable work what people have done to document his story, but again, I think I would like to magnify that message and really root home to that first expedition, and try and look at the lineage behind how Matthew Henderson came about on the voyage, and hopefully find some family relatives of Matthew, and kind of see their thoughts on Matthew, and do a whole big piece on it.
And how long ago did Matthew go to the North Pole?
Dates, I'm gonna say it was, you know what, I don't want to get this wrong.
You said one of the first, or the first?
It was he was a part of the first expedition. Who reached the North Pole. So he was part of the crew. I don't really want to say the wrong thing. But he was a part of that. Crew.
Listeners can find out when it was. It was obviously a long time ago. I can't remember exactly when it was. I don't think I was live at the time. So you want to do the North Pole and Everest in the same year?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
There's still a lot to get Everest out of the way, to be fair. It's been a tough ordeal, to say the least. But if all goes well, my aim is to, do Everest,
And,
summit Everest, and go to the North Pole in one consecutive year.
which challenge do you think is going to be the hardest out of those two?
Um, I keep saying to myself the North Pole might be. For me, I feel, because I've done Nordic-esque kind of trips before, thank you to the army and stuff I've done there. And I'm not going to lie, it's been pretty tedious. Like I just see myself um, like either skiing-ish, like cross-country skiing, or dragging all my kit behind me. Like the amazing people have done it before, but that to me, I think will be quite tedious, and that as well for the mental side of things will be very tough.
Yeah.
And that's why I like the idea of doing it. For me, Everest is me climbing a mountain, and I know I enjoy that regardless on how tough and how tedious it may be.
And moving back to Everest, what will
Mhm.
be the toughest part of Everest for you? Is it the air, the actual strenuous walking, the time it takes? What will be the biggest challenge, do you think?
My biggest challenge, I think, will hopefully I'll overcome that big challenge when I go out in October, to find out if my body is used to the acclimatization of it all.
Yeah.
And like you said, the lack of oxygen, and I'm going to say it, like the cold as well. That's something on my mind, just because if you don't have the right kit, especially for like Caribbean and African people, we're susceptible to the cold a little bit more than maybe a European would be. So for me, that's something the British Army definitely pushed as well, when they were educating us and directing us within like cold injury or heat injury. It was who's susceptible to what and why and what are the signs. And I'm been fortunate to get that kind of insight to my own body and what it could withstand. So with that, this will be my first kind of exposure to that kind of climate. So hopefully I don't kind of fall sick to a great extent for that kind of trip to be a success. That's the only thing that's playing on my mind at the moment. But I'm sure I'll have the right kit. I'm sure I'll have the right drills and the equipment to go with it, and it will be a success. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I wish you all the very best on that, and
thank you very much.
I'm sure it will be, John. I think we've already spoken about nature and the outdoors, and how it provides that positive balance. And I think, summing up, through your upbringing, your sort of getting out of that into the army, and the sort of vision you've had for the True North project, I think clearly when people hear about that, particularly younger people, which you're aiming for, that's got to be inspirational. And also the fact that you're going to you can do Everest and the North Pole. That's something else to talk about as well. And just moving on to your speaking engagements.
Mm-hmm.
What's your audience for these speaking engagements, and what's your main message?
For me, I would like to have a perfect answer for that, but quite frankly, it's something still very new to me. I've had speaking engagements with schools predominantly. That's kind of my aim audience, or my target audience at the moment, because those are the people I really want to help and engage with and empower. But I've done corporate level as well, where I talk about mindset and team building, and really connecting the overall organization to equip their staff and their teams to optimize their effectiveness, and for whatever means that may be. But those are short and few at the moment, because it's just, I don't think I've got enough under my belt to be directing that level of how do I say this?
Well, it's work in progress by the sound
It's
of it.
work in progress.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I'm still getting engagements within the outdoor industry. So I'm
Yeah.
speaking at the National Outdoor Expo next year in March. So do come
Oh, wow.
along to that.
Yeah, definitely.
And it'll be great to have that conversation after my first expedition to Nepal,
Yes.
and talking about the future of the True North project as well, where hopefully I will be launching the official youth initiative within the project,
Yes.
where I'm aiming to get outdoor education outdoors. Outdoor education outdoors into schools, sorry.
Yeah.
Mainly schools within the city centres of the UK, because it's, from what I've seen working with schools at the moment, the access isn't there, and the funds aren't there. Not only that, the training isn't there for the schools,
Yeah.
and their teachers and their colleagues. So for me, it would be a great way of having a conversation with the governing bodies like Ofsted, and local communities and governors, to really home in on kind of reinvented the wheel. And I think the education system at the moment is very dated. And I think for where we're at now as a society, I think we need to relook and reevaluate how schools are being taught, what they're being taught, and the direction for what they're being taught in.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think outdoor education doesn't mean they need to learn about building fires or camps as much or as such. It would be more towards just being in the outdoor elements. Like, for instance, a month ago, I took a school from Leeds. I took a group of the students and their teachers to the Yorkshire Dales, and they climbed their first mountain. And to see the students and the impact it had for them,
Yes.
even though it was kind of on their doorstep, they needed to get a coach,
Yeah.
which still costs.
Yeah.
But when we got there, it was the transition between, oh my god, I can't even see the mountain in the clouds, and telling them that that's where they're
Going
going,
up it. Yeah. Yeah.
and seeing how they cope with that pressure was just an amazing experience. There was one girl, what sticks out to me the most, which I was pretty much next to the whole time walking up. And she was hysterical at times. She was like, she was in a, how do I say it? She wasn't the fittest of the group, if that makes sense. But she made it happen. Like, all it was, she needed someone who she trusts to motivate her, and tell her, look, you're not going to give up, and you're not going to let this mountain beat you. You're going to make your mum proud, this, that, and the other. It was very, like, heartfelt, and you could see that even though she was crying, she wanted to sit down, she was asking for her mum, and all the rest of it. She got there, and then I said, you're going to thank me, you're going to thank your teachers, and you're going to have a massive smile on your face when you're up there. The weather was miserable, but I looked around once we reached the summit, and sure enough, she was there, and she went, thank you, and she had a massive smile on her face.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And that's just one individual out of the whole maybe 30 kids. So, and they were all enjoying it. It was just, it's so impactful to see young minds just experience that whole, oh my god, like, I'm seeing a screensaver for real life kind of thing.
Yeah.
And seeing that they've done something very, very powerful.
Deon, this resonates with me a lot, actually, because I wasn't a million miles away from where you live. I lived in Windsor, and our school we went to had an outdoor pursuits. That the head teacher was very much into outdoor pursuits. And we used to, every year, this was on the senior school, one year we went to the Peak District, the next year we went to the Yorkshire Dales, the third year we went to Snowdonia, and the fourth to the Lake District.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was. And only for a week, just as the schools broke up. But the experience it gave people. I mean, I was fortunate as a kid that I'd sort of been to a lot of those places anyway with the family, but there were kids that hadn't.
Hmm.
And like you said, you see the smiles on their faces, you see them trekking up a hill up to Kinder Scout or somewhere, and you get to the top, and there's a almost like a euphoric feeling when you get there, isn't there?
Yeah,
And you're looking down.
certainly is.
Yeah, and you're looking down on clouds. You're not looking up to them. You're looking down. It's an amazing experience. So I couldn't agree more.
Again, you telling me that resonated with me. So it's something I think, regardless of how many times you go up a hill or you do a bit of hiking and you reach a summit somewhere, that same process happens to all of us, and it happens to me even now. I've climbed Snowdon probably more than 15 times. Yeah, sure, it was my first mountain, and I keep going back there for whatever reason, and now it's just getting congested. But that's another story and another rant to go on. But like, no matter how many times I've climbed it, the experience is different each time, and for me, it's still good to be humble enough to have that first experience, like the children, um, and 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 just take it all in. And when I say take it all in, I mean understand what you're feeling, understand what you're seeing. It might be foggy at the top and you can't see nothing, but it's all a part of that experience. And for me, it's a way of tuning into myself, and it is pressing that reset button. And for what you've overcome that day, you can take that back and go to work and feel like you've overcome quite a bit. Yeah, I think for kids to have that and have that frame of reference as well of their strengths, their own powers, and the fact that they had doubts before they done it and then they succeeded. I think that is what I want to teach young minds today, is the power of their own strength and the ability of overcoming your own doubts as well. Because in this world, we've got so many things. We can get doubts, we get confused, we get misguided, we get controlled by the outside, external factors rather than our own factors. And this is what finding your true north is. It's about your personal and like your own journey that involves understanding your own values, your passions, and your purpose in life. And like that's really what like the True North project is about. It's about having that message, the ethos, what goes along with it, and having people do that for themselves. Like, yeah, that's really what I want people to take away from my project is, yeah, be selfless, but look towards yourself for the answers. You don't need to listen to the naysayers. You don't need to get confused by your peers and have peer pressure get get you all hot and flustered about things, when really, when you look inside yourself and you understand your true passions and you follow them and you pursue them and you're driven, trust me, like the perspective on the way life is in the world, it is completely different. And I've only just discovered that as a 30-year-old man. So I want young people to really try and get that on board as well.
I think it's great, and nature's a great way of providing that. Just going back to some of the things that you're doing, I read about your 12 in 4 challenge. 12 peaks, is that?
It was 12 peaks. So my friend and I kind of knew we wanted a challenge, and he knew I wanted a challenge because I told him about Everest, and I was like, look, I don't know if I could manage Everest as much as I may think, so I need to put myself to the test. And lo and behold, there was a list of mountains which people have maybe ticked off over a course of a few months and maybe done over the Welsh 3000s, which is a challenge in Wales, and it takes on some of these mountains, or the majority of the mountains we put together. But what it was 12 of the tallest mountains in Snowdonia, Wales, which added up to the height of Mount Everest from sea level.
Yeah.
So I was just like, well, there we go. That is the challenge now.
Yeah.
And for me, time is at the essence, because at the time I was still serving. I was just starting a family, so I had limited time myself. So for me, if I'm going to do any challenge at the moment, it needs to be done in a couple of days.
Yeah.
So I was just like, okay, these 12 mountains. Normally, if I do go to Wales or that side of Wales, I managed to get maybe 2 or 3 mountains a day. So for me, I calculated it and I was just like, okay, 12 mountains, I'll do that in 4 days. And some people thought I was crazy. My good friend who understands the challenge, he was just like, yeah, this sounds epic. Let's do it. So we put that together. So what I got when I advertised the fact that I was doing a challenge like this was a lot of people were saying, well, why don't you just do the Welsh 3000s? And for me, it was just, okay, maybe the challenge isn't described to the best standard, but it was essentially each mountain I'm climbing up and I'm coming down.
Yeah.
So I'm ascending and I'm descending each mountain, one after the other, with my own personal kit and equipment on me. So it's I wasn't trail running or anything like that. I was.
Do you camp as well, or do you?
So the plan was to camp. The weather was horrendous, so luckily there was like a little pit stop area for the cars to kind of correlate and make it a base camp. So we done that. So some of the safety crew stayed at the cars and radioed up to me and the crew on the ground, and we just kept on turning that around to make sure everyone had fresh legs, apart from myself, who ended up walking like John Wayne at the end of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the reason I ask about were you camping is because many years ago I did the Pennine Way with a couple of guys.
Amazing, yeah.
And we said, oh yeah, we're going to camp. So I remember the first day we had this, whacking great rucksacks each, and it was pretty soul destroying. Obviously, I hadn't been in the army like you, Deon, so I wasn't used to it. Anyway, we got to a youth hostel. We camped in the, in the grounds of the youth hostel. Didn't sleep particularly well. Did another day. Got to a guest house, board and lodging about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, evening, and for the rest of the trip, which was about 12 days, we had a chat with the guy that ran the guest house and asked him if we could sort of dump the kit off there, and from then on we just stayed in bed and breakfasts. So yeah, not quite the challenge that you do, but it made it a lot easier, I have to say.
Well, to me, when I hear people like yourself mention like challenging things, right, and they had a standard, and maybe that standard may have dropped due to like B&Bs or whatnot, and you wanted to camp, like that challenge is still a challenge, and I think we find it easy to kind of play things down. Even myself, when I talk to people, I'm like, yeah, I've done 12 mountains. It was nothing. It was the hardest thing ever, and I think where I could and where I needed to cut corners in regards to my admin and stuff like that, which I, like you said, camping, I was in a warm car majority of my rest periods, and for me I was just like, well, this isn't the challenge, is it? But it really was, and I needed my safety crew to tell me, look, you're doing fantastic, you're on target, like you're doing amazing. So like sometimes we do play it down a bit, and I think everyone's got their own challenge as well. One thing I've said when I mentioned that I'm aiming to climb Everest, they're like, oh, I'd never do that, and I was just like, okay, what would you do? Like I like finding out what a challenging climb would be for them, and most people say like Snowdon because it's a known mountain for them, and I just feel like everyone's got their own level of challenge, and even if you go ahead and do one and it isn't to the standard you thought, it's still a challenge nonetheless. So
I was going to ask you. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the ultimate challenge. I guess Everest and North Pole are the ultimate challenge, aren't they? Or are there any other challenges you'd like to share with listeners?
So right now, yeah, you're right. So Everest, the biggest challenge for me isn't the physical aspect of it all. It's more the administrative side of it all. The challenge is getting people on board to
Yeah,
support what I'm trying to do.
yeah,
So the biggest challenge for me, which takes a hit mentally and sometimes physically as well, is the fact that it's making ends meet to make this challenge work, because it's all good saying it, but until I've got the fundamental pieces to make it happen,
yeah,
then that's really when like the green light is on. So yes, the Everest and North Pole is a big challenge in itself, and I can't wait to get on and do it. But it's making the pieces come together
yes,
beforehand as well, which
yeah,
is a very challenging thing. But looking into the future, I have always said I want to do um, solo expeditions in each different continent and different climate. So I want to be able to document those, again, educational pieces to really bring back to the schools, to individuals, and hopefully to the masses about a city boy who didn't really know much about the mountains, who found love for the mountains, but then and has gone into these extreme climates and environments,
yeah,
and brought back the information about the peoples there, like, just, yeah, I kind of want to be a bit more of uh, an educator through
yeah,
my journeys, rather than this is my amazing challenge.
yeah,
Look at me, I'm doing it for such and such, and like, for me that feels very cliche, and I want to be able to give that a little bit more
yeah.
while I've got that in me.
No,
So
I understand that. Yeah, the
yeah,
purpose is really to inspire others
yeah.
who perhaps wouldn't and bring out their potential. I can see a book there somewhere, Dion.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I've got it in a document somewhere, hiding
Yeah,
away.
yeah,
It's, for me, writing is not my forte, nor is reading, just due to the immense dyslexia, which is a strength and a weakness. But it will happen. It's just sometimes, like I've just said to you, I'm devil's advocate, and I play myself down a little bit, and I put myself off it, and I procrastinate. So, but yes, there will be a book, and hopefully a lot more to come in the
yeah.
near future. So
I mean, in terms of the obtaining the sponsorship, you mentioned that's probably one of the biggest challenges, and I can understand that. I guess you are, or you're learning from people who've done similar things where they've had to get sponsorship.
Yes and no. The thing what I found, and this is something again that I would love to be, once it's all done and ticked, I want to be able to speak to people and actually be a voice of understanding the actual process and the resilient nature of the beast.
Yeah,
That you need you need to be persistent. You're going to get a lot of no's, you're going to get a lot of maybes, and then empty kind of promises. You have to be sure that whatever you got in front of you, what you need sponsorship for, that you want it to the core of your nature.
yeah,
Otherwise, it just won't work. And that still continues with me. I've had plenty of great conversations with various organizations and companies and people, but it's really people have got to take a risk with you until you really start. Well, after Everest, I'm pretty sure people may jump on the bandwagon or whatever it may
yeah,
be,
yeah.
but
It's that first one.
it's that initial start which
Yeah,
is the hardest, and people know it. But I think the nature of the beast also, when you do ask someone who has done it, they'll drip feed you until they feel like maybe they've given up too much, if that makes sense. Where I'm like, look, guys, why are we gatekeeping the like the sponsorship world? I think if someone believes in your story, believes in your purpose and your aim and your mission, regardless, I think like it should be free game. And I think the mentality of the industry of that side of things is very it's got this gatekeeper kind of
Which
mentality over it.
which is sad, really, because there must be other people in different fields looking to do the same things, and you've really, it's really a case of sharing best practice, I think.
Yeah, exactly that, and I think especially it takes a lot for someone to put their life efforts and everything towards an expedition or towards something where you do need sponsorship. And when you get that sponsorship, it's like that golden ticket. And I think for people to work that hard and then get there, I think there's also an element of, well, why am I going to give this person that golden ticket when I had to work so hard for it? And like that's just not me. If I've got it and I've done it, I can only pay it forward for the next person to come along and hopefully do better than what I had done. Like I love seeing people go through that challenge but come out the other side and doing amazing things. And I think if the industry gets on board of that, as much as they do say it, I think there's a little grey area of how the industry controls and divides the kind of outdoor industry for sure. So it's something I do want to kind of open up the floodgates in a way.
So if we've got any listeners interested in becoming involved with your project, either sponsorship or actually getting involved in some of the activities, what should they do?
They should email me. They should reach me on my website, truenorthproject.co.uk, or they can find me on Instagram and shoot me over a message on there where I'm most active, which is again truenorth_project. Let's talk. I'm not one to segregate myself to one person or one kind of avenue. I like building bridges. I like building long relationships with people, and I want people on board who really feel the passion with what I'm trying to do and achieve. And anyone who wants to kind of change our communities and everything like that, and as well as taking a risk, give me a shout.
That's fantastic. So, well, it's been a really interesting conversation, Deon. I think it's fantastic what you're doing. It's certainly very inspiring for anybody listening to. And I think the goal of helping particularly young people in probably inner cities who have never had the chance to experience the outdoors with what you're doing is great. My guest today has been Deon Barrett. Deon is an outdoor adventurer, motivational speaker, and is founder of the True North Project, a link of which can be found on the show notes. Thank you for coming on the show, Deon.
Thank you for having me, Bob. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
You have been listening to Undercurrent Stories. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share the show link to your friends and family, and if you have 60 seconds, I will be most grateful if you would please rate and review. To hear more episodes, please subscribe to the show and visit undercurrentstories.com. If you leave your email in the link, we will notify you as soon as new episodes are released. Also, check out our social media links, details of which can be found on the show notes. Until next time, this is Bob Wells wishing you all the very best.